Okay. Are we on?
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay. Can you mute yourself so that I can be
Yep.
the speaker view? Okay, I'm still not the speaker view, so that's okay.
Kathy, I put you on pin, so you're big on my screen, so you should, everybody.
Okay, great. Okay, good. Okay. I'm seeing you, but that's okay. So you know what I'll do? I will, hello everybody. And I'm going to start the screen share. But I'm going to talk a little bit first about, so when Deb asked me to talk today, you know, she said it would be really interesting to see how it's resonating with America's chart. So the first thing I will tell you is that there's a whole bunch of different charts that astrologers use for the birth chart of America. Any country can have a birth chart. Any business can have a birth chart. It isn't just personal birth charts. So when we do astrology, what it is that we say, you know, why astrology? If we believe that we're all, you know, one, if we believe that we're connected not just to each other but to heaven and earth, then astrology makes sense. The energies, we call them the archetypal energies. Each of the planets represent an archetypal energy, and so there's here. Why don't we do it this way? There's a, you know what it is? I'm having trouble because I see all of you in a gallery. There, I got it done. We have ways that we do personal charts, but then we also can do what we call mundane charts. And that's when we talk about countries. Okay. So all of you might know that the sun represents the spirit. And so in a personal chart, we'd say, this is what we're learning. The sun is what we're learning. It's our spirit. It's what drives us. But in a mundane chart, it symbolizes the head of state, the president, the king, the prime minister. In a personal chart, the moon represents our unconscious, the way we are. It represents our emotional bodies, so our true sense of ourselves. And the sun and the moon together represent how that sense of ourselves feeds into the spirit that we came in to manifest this lifetime. But in a mundane chart, the moon represents the people or the public opinions. Mercury in both charts represent communication or communication style, but in a mundane chart, it represents the communication network and transportation, as well as young people and teachers. Venus represents how we love, what we value, how we go about connecting to people. And don't mind me, I'm just trying to get something back. And Deb is still the main person for me, so I'm going to leave it at that. But in a mundane chart, it represents the arts and women and glamour and finances. In astrology, Venus represents finances because Venus is about values, okay, what we value. In a personal chart, it represents our self-worth. And so we translate that into worth, you know. Mars represents war, the military, police, you know. Jupiter represents expansion and also clergy and judges. Saturn represents the elderly. You can see conservatism, deadly epidemics, and you'll see why that's important. Uranus represents technology and outer space and wild changes, not only in the weather, but in revolutions. Okay, Uranus is the revolutionary. Neptune represents our connection to spirit, but it also represents, in a mundane chart, socialism and how we take advantage of everyone, you know, how we take care of everyone, and drug problems. And Pluto represents power. And in in mundane astrology, it represents upheaval in the government, terrorism, things like that. I'll show you the chart for 9/11 at some point, which is so interesting. So it also rules all hidden things, so viruses and things like that. I'm not going to go through all of this quickly, but in regular astrology, the first house represents how we see ourselves and how other people see us. But in mundane astrology, it represents the country and the citizens and the image and the characteristics we have, which you'll see when I talk about America's chart. Second house is money, just like in personal, but you'll see that's important as I talk about America's chart and what's going on right now, and so on and so forth. So right now, we're not going to really do that, but what I'd like to talk about a bit is right now what's going on now. I think if I give you an idea of what's going on now, and I know some of you have read either my newsletters or other people's newsletters for the last year, so you know a bit about this, but I thought it would be good for you to sort of have a recapitulation. Last year, around this time, everything changed, right? But last year, big changes were coming, and astrologers knew this. 3 cycles changed. Now, every time you have 2 planets, you have a cycle, like the moon cycle, right? You have the new moon, the first quarter moon, the full moon, the waning moon, and then back to the new moon. And 2 planets create a cycle as well. And last year, and then when they come together, like a new moon, they change. It's a new cycle, right? So last year, 3 big cycles changed. And that's unusual, but 3 of them, they were all in the sign of Capricorn. Now, Capricorn in astrology represents the government. It represents the institutions we create together, okay? For the last maybe 500 years, it represents patriarchy because men have been in charge. Although we're hoping that because of this big change of last year, Capricorn will come to represent maybe the Council of Grandmothers or maybe the Council of Elders, and we'll finally start to grow up, because you have to remember, America is a very young country. So the 3 cycles that changed were Pluto and Saturn came together in Capricorn, Jupiter and Pluto came together, and then in Capricorn, and then Jupiter and Saturn came together in Aquarius. Okay, so Pluto represents death and rebirth. It represents digging up. When it goes into a sign, it says, let's look at what is dead in this area of life, and let's bring it up to the surface so we can compost it and do something new. So Pluto went into the sign of Capricorn in 2008. And if you remember what happened in 2008, we had the big financial crunch, because Capricorn rules our financial and economic system. But instead of them actually fixing it, they just put Band-Aids on it. But it brought up the dysfunction. And ever since then, more and more of the dysfunction of our government has been brought up to our attention, right? Until we hit last January 12th, 2020. And that's when Pluto and Saturn conjuncted in Capricorn. Now, Saturn is structures and forms and limitation and authority and responsibility, and Pluto is power and, of course, death and rebirth. So on the one hand, on a negative sense, the power people tried to keep the structures in order. On another sense, in a deeper level, Pluto killed all of the structures, right? We broke it apart. I like to say Mother Earth sent us to our rooms, but in whatever way you want to look at it, the structure of our world and our governments completely began to disintegrate since last January 12th, when they came together, right? They have, now Pluto and Saturn come together every 33 to 37 or 38 years because they have erratic, especially Pluto has an erratic orbit. It's so far out. And they come together in all different signs, but they haven't come together in Capricorn, which are about society structures, since around 1518. And that was when Martin Luther pinned his 95 theses about why the Catholic Church had no right to sell indulgences. And he started the Protestant Reformation. And the world changed. If you know your history, before that, the Catholic Church ran everything in the West. They were the supreme authority. So having this for the first time in 500 years was a big deal. And it signaled the beginning of this tremendous change in culture, not just our American culture, but in world culture. So the interesting thing is all three of these planets, when they came together, except for the Saturn and Jupiter, but they came together around 22 to 25 degrees Capricorn. So if any of you know your chart, if you have 23 to 25 degrees or 26 degrees of Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, you have gone through a tremendous change along with this energy. So that was the first thing. So, the shit hit the fan, excuse me, but it did. We didn't know on the 12th about the virus, did we? Not really. They came together and everything exploded. Then Jupiter and Pluto came together. And that is usually about pandemics. It's so interesting. Jupiter and Pluto come together every 12 or 13 years, but they came together in 1918 for the Spanish flu. They came together in 1981 with HIV when Pluto and Jupiter were in Libra. And I didn't go back in history. I didn't want to give you a whole history lesson, but basically, there was a lot going. If you go back and you study it, there's been a lot of pandemics when Jupiter and Pluto get together. Jupiter expands things. So if Pluto represents death, Jupiter says, let's make it bigger, right? So it expands things. And then the third thing that happened last year, which is really powerful, is Jupiter and Saturn came together on December 21st on winter solstice in the very first degree of Aquarius. Now, Jupiter and Saturn come together every 20 years. They are like these social planets. What they do is they create the sort of the paradigm of culture. They create the outline. Jupiter expansion, Saturn contraction. So every 20 years, it starts a new cycle, right? But for the last 200 years, they've all occurred in Earth signs. And so the culture, our culture especially, has been concerned with materiality, with material goods, with money. Okay. This year, they came together in air signs for the first time in 800 years. They did come together once. Sometimes when cycles are about to change, you get a little preview. The last time they came together, they were in Earth signs for the last 200 years, except for in the 80s. Okay, they had that little dip into air signs because Libra is an air sign, so is Aquarius. And what happened since the 80s? Libra is the sign of relationships. And ever since the 80s, we've seen an explosion of all different types of relationships. We have I never get the letters right, but the lesbian, transgender, all those different factions have come in. And now we have marriages between same-sex couples. So this is the type of change it brings because air signs are about how we think about things. So having Jupiter and Saturn come into Aquarius, it's saying we are about to embark on social change all over the world, okay? And Aquarius is all about equality. It's the reformer, it's the freedom fighter, it's humanitarian. So it's about universal idealism, about freedom, and about sharing. I'm going to talk more about it at the end of the lecture because I'm going to do a quick little talk about the upcoming new moon in Aquarius, which is going to happen on the 11th. The other thing that's interesting is that in 2016, Neptune had gone into its own sign of Pisces. Neptune is our connection to the imagination and to spirit, because that's how we connect to spirit, through our creative imagination, right? When we say we are like God or we are like Great Spirit, how are we like that energy? We're like it through our creative imagination, the fact that we can tap into it and create things. So Neptune in Pisces has been all about dissolving old belief systems in some ways, but also opening us up to spirit more. Saturn back in 2016 was in the sign of Sagittarius, which was about our belief systems. So when they square each other, that's a challenge. And so it was interesting that ever since 2016, we're hearing about fake news, right? I don't remember hearing anybody talk about fake news before then. And, or discovering the truth. It's really about finding new meaning and a vision, okay? Your own personal vision, but it can also lead to blind faith. And we've seen that with what happened with President Trump and his followers. For some reason, they are following him with blind faith and not thinking for themselves. Now, it's interesting. One last thing I will say, an astrologer friend of mine told me that Steve Bannon, who was Trump's advisor, especially in the beginning, is a trained occultist. So he knows astrology. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they made use of knowing that all of this stuff was coming down the road, and they could twist it and use it to their advantage more than any other time in history, right? Because really what happened in 2016 was we need to look at our beliefs and we need to find the truth. But if you have some people who are willing to twist things, they can say, guess what? You can't believe in anything. There's nothing to believe in. Now listen to me and I'll tell you what to believe in. And that's what we found. So all of that was going on in this last year and a bit. So this is America's 4th of July birth chart. Now, we use this chart. There's so many different ways we can use, pick. It's not the chart of when we wrote the Constitution. It's not the chart of when we wrote up the articles of whatever, okay? It's the chart of the moment when we said, this is a declaration of our purpose. We hold these, we hold these truths to be self-evident, right? All men are created equal, and we won't have tyrants taking over us. So this is the chart when we declared our independence. We weren't even a country yet, but it was just a way of coming together. So I'm just going to go through it quickly because you don't need to know all astrology. But so this is America's birth chart for the 4th of July in Philadelphia, 5:13:55 p.m. And so what we have here is the sun. This is Jupiter and Venus, and then Mars in Gemini. So we have Venus, Jupiter, the sun, and then you see up here we have Mercury retrograde, all in Cancer. So we are a Cancer country, okay? Right? And what do we say? This, send us your poor, send us your, send us the people that are rejected. We will take them all in and nurture them, right? So that's our Cancer-like signature, if you will. And because it's in what is called the 7th house, it's the house of, if this is who we are, this is who other people are, it's the house of how we relate to other people. In a personal chart, it would be the house of relationships, right? And so, especially Jupiter, very expansive in Cancer. It's wonderful. Let me feed all of you. So, one of the things that happens is that it gives us that optimism and sense of exceptionalism. Okay. But it also can lead to a bit of delusion that we don't want to see who we really are. So, so here we are, a Cancer country. Okay. And also, if you look, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's Libra, and Pluto is in Capricorn. 6 signs are in cardinal signs. Cardinal signs are the signs that turn the seasons, the solstices and the equinoxes. And so we're a nation that thrives on action. Okay. We're a world leader, right? There's a sense that we have a lot of water in our chart. Okay, we have Cancer, all that water. And so we tend to be, we say we're compassionate and we take care of people, not so much anymore, but okay. So the thing is, in astrology, we also say, what is the ruler of the chart? I'm going to get to that in a minute, but we usually look at the ascendant, what's coming up over the horizon at the moment of birth. And for us, it's Sagittarius, which I'll get to in a moment. But the ruler of Sagittarius is Jupiter, which is in Cancer. So Cancer is ruled by the moon. Here's the moon. The moon represents us, the people, and it's in Aquarius, right? So here we are. It's that it says ultimately the people rule. The people rule the chart. In the if the Constitution, which is our law, if something doesn't work and it's perverted and destructive, the Declaration says we have the right to change it. We have the right to abolish the system of government and change the government because we are ruled, our country is ruled by the people. Those were all those people being misled, saying, this is our house, we're going to come in and take it over. That's another thing we'll get to about what's going on right now and why they thought it was time for them to take over the country. It's interesting because the moon is down here in what we call the third house, which is about how we travel, how we learn, about education, new experiences, things like that, and also how we connect to people. So our cars, our phones, social media, all of those things are tied into the Aquarian moon, which of course Aquarius is the sign of equality and innovation, right? So we are very much about how do we share ideas, right? Everything's free and we all share it. So just to go back for a minute, so here we are. We're going to feed you. We're going to take care of you. Come to our shores. The people rule here. Once you're a citizen, if you actually vote and you actually pay attention, which we're supposed to do. And I think that was the best thing that happened in the last 4 years, that people returned and got involved in government again, because we left it alone for too long. A lot of the hippies from the 60s, we went off on our spiritual journeys, and a lot of very conservative people took over local government and also our national government. And there's nothing wrong with conservatives, except now what's happened is the people on the far right, they want us to live by their religious laws, which we're not supposed to live by. It's not supposed, we're supposed to have separation of church and state. So we're coming up against the old and the new. And you'll see that this is very much about right now how it's a split between the old and the new. Are we going to go back to the past, or are we going to go forward into the future? Another interesting thing is we have Mars here in the house of open enemies. Okay. And so it's really interesting because one of the other things, it's in Gemini. And so one of the things about Gemini is about how we communicate. And so we have this aggressive communication style, and it's about patriotism. We love our mother, the country, and we have a very patriotic, country because of that. But Mars is in the 7th house, which is the house of war. And it's so interesting because our global power and our enormous wealth today has been a direct result of the last two world wars. Because during that, the big business made tons of money at the expense of all the other nations. Even though we gave back with the Marshall Plan, you know, we made tons of money on war, and we're still doing it, aren't we? Now, in the chart, Mercury is in Cancer. It's called in the 8th house, which is the house of investments and money. And so American money talks, doesn't it? And Mercury is opposite Pluto in this birth chart. And that's the whole other thing. Right now, we're having our Pluto return, not this year, but in the next 2 years. Every 248 years, Pluto makes a cycle, and it comes back to where it was when we were born. And the country was born when Pluto was in Capricorn at 27 or 28 degrees Capricorn, and it's in the house of money. And so here it is, opposite Mercury. So a lot of secrets, behind the scenes secrets over money. And of course, you do know that we were founded by a corporation. Not only the Dutch the East Indian Trading Company, because of course, who could get here unless a corporation paid their way? So we're the first truly corporate state in the world. We were founded just right when the Industrial Revolution started. So we have this tremendous sense of corporate power in America. And that's one of the big issues that we're going to be facing. And so when the country was born, Mercury was retrograde in Cancer, but it was also about hidden wealth. You know, here we are, we have this big country. It's going to be really wealthy. There's all that wealth under the land. Corporations are going to be in control. And hopefully what we'll see now that Pluto is back exactly opposite this Mercury right now as we speak, this year, all this year, we're going to see some of the hidden secrets about who has been running this country, perhaps, come out. So it's about, of course, Mercury has to do with the media and how we think about things. So hopefully this year there's going to be a lot of news about that. Now, the next thing we look at, so the sun, we love you all, come here, we'll be your mommy. The moon, we're all free, and it's all about us, and it's all about the people being free and equal. We look at the ascendant, and the ascendant is how others see us and how we see ourselves. So it represents the myths of our nation, our image of ourselves, right? And our national characteristics. And the myth of America for the longest time was the Wild West. This opportunistic freedom to go out there and to open up frontiers and compete with, wild nature and tame it. And that's what Sag is. Sagittarius says, go out, keep moving, look for new adventures, go on a quest, right? It's about expansion. And, but also Sagittarius is about religion, because Jupiter represents, justice, but it also represents religion. And the US was founded by a group of pilgrims, right? And so, yes, they wanted religious freedom, but they also have instituted a lot of religious laws, I guess you could say. And one of the things was about, well, we can conquer this land and these native people because we have God's approval. And that's such a Sagittarius thing. Okay. So on the one hand, we welcome all these people into our country. It doesn't matter what religions you are, you can all come here, right? So that's a good thing. That's Jupiter in the 7th house. Come on in. But also there's that entitlement thing about, we can go out and conquer and take over all of you because God wills it. I don't know if you all studied history, but I always used to like laugh. You know, the French would fight the English and God was on both of their sides. So kill everybody and God will love you. It's a misuse of religion, as we all know now. Okay. But that's how our country was founded. So I have to just for a minute go and shut my phone off because I keep hearing dings. 1 second. It's probably all my kids sort of starting to talk about the Patriots and Tom Brady. You know, they WhatsApp each other constantly. So there's sort of a paradigm or the picture, the story, the mythic story of America. We're going to welcome everybody. We're all going to be free and we're going to conquer the land and expand. And we're going to go out in the world and be the leader. Interesting. This is called the 10th house. So this is like a Capricorn house and it rules government. Saturn in Libra. Saturn represents laws and authority, and Libra represents equality. And isn't it interesting that the basic government that we have is all about the Constitution, okay? And it's all about how we have 3 separate but equal parts of government, the executive, the Congress, and the courts. So it was all about trying to balance the power of these 3 main branches of government. You do know that the founders were all Freemasons, so they knew astrology, okay? They knew esoteric things. So, you know, they probably thought what was a good day and what was a good time for us to start this process, because that's the energy, as Deb said, that's the energy that will infuse our spirit. Now, you know, this is, so here's the structure of laws, okay? And that's it. So the last thing is Pluto. Pluto down here in the house of values, but of wealth. And so corporate control, possessions, and things like that. And also the past and imperialism, okay? Because that's what we are, you know, we're an imperial power, especially the big business that runs us. And it's and Mercury retrograde, Pluto opposite Mercury retrograde in the 8th house of other people's money. So our money and our wealth and other people's money. So it's really all about the deals that you have from contracts and cooperation, sort of general business, right? Okay, so the last thing that I'll talk about, and then we'll go on, is here, this little key guy here, this like a K over a circle. That's Chiron. Chiron was a centaur, the horseman who taught heroes their destiny. He taught Asclepius about healing, and he taught all of the warriors, and he taught Hercules. And Hercules, sort of being a dumb warrior, fired a poison arrow up into the sky and it hit Chiron. So he was wounded with the poison, but he couldn't die because he was immortal. And so we say that Chiron is the wounded healer. And until you're about 51, when you have your Chiron return, sometimes you wonder what the heck's going on. It's not a mommy wound, like mommy was bad to me. She was a witch. She made me not love myself. Or a father wound. Oh my God, I'm never good enough for anything. It's sort of a general cosmic wound. Okay. And then when you come back to yourself at 51, you go, why did I feel like that? If you have been past 51, you'll know what I mean. So America's wound is in Aries. It's in who am I? And I find it so interesting because Americans are all orphans. Even if your family came over on the Mayflower, we haven't lived in this country long enough to put down the deep roots that most other countries have. China, Italy, the Middle East, Africa, Western Europe, they have lived there for thousands of years. We have all picked up our roots and we plopped them down here in America. And basically, since we're a country of immigrants, we don't know where we belong, right? My grandparents came over, both sets of grandparents came over from Europe, and they tried to become so American. They stopped speaking Italian and Hungarian. It was like they got rid of all of their customs because they wanted to be Americans, if not in the first generation, certainly in the second and third. And so part of it is we don't have very strong roots in some ways. I never watched Oprah Winfrey much because who had time to watch TV when you had 4 kids, especially at 4 in the afternoon? I think that's when she was on. But I did watch her the last week she was on. And one of the things she said is, talking to so many people through all these years, the one thing that I come away with is how little self-worth Americans have. And we don't have that self-worth because we don't have strong roots. But we're having our Chiron return in the next maybe 4 or 5 years. And so maybe we will begin to identify with this idea of we are free citizens and we get to choose the government that we need to have, and we get to take care of all the people that are important to us. Now, the other thing, which is a little esoteric, and I'm just going to mention it quickly, there are things called the moon's node. That's where eclipses occur. And they change. They move through the sky. They're just points in space where the plane of the sun, the moon, and the earth come together, and that's why we can have eclipses. And it just means the north node is above the ecliptic and the south node is below it. But all planets have nodes. And the reason in Sagittarius can be very moralistic and not necessarily all that eccentric and Uranian and freedom loving. In a way they are. They're more like a gypsy. But this north node is on, our ascendant is on the north node of Uranus. So we're very Uranian. And Uranus rules Aquarius. Uranus is the wake up, the planet of awakening, of revolution, of being a genius, of thinking out of the box, of disruption and rebellion. And so there's a little added attraction that we have. Okay. Just to show you, okay, this is the chart of 9/11 when the first plane hit the tower. The main thing that I want to show you, which I'll show in the next one, that's it. But I'm going to put it around. The inner ring is America's chart. In here, this is the chart I just showed you. And out here is the chart of 9/11. Okay, so here's America's chart. On 9/11, Pluto, death and rebirth, was right on our ascendant. Saturn, the planet of conservatism, of authority, was in the sign of the twins, Gemini, the twin towers. And having that, okay, here's the war, Mars and Gemini. So having that there, it changed how we saw ourselves. We became vulnerable, didn't we? Some people use an American birth chart with Gemini rising and Sag on the descendant. So you could say, here was our twin towers, our commercial interests, and here was a group of crazy religious fanatics blowing it up. Either way, it resonates with America's chart. So this is America's progress chart. Progressions, like if you've ever had your own astrology chart done, when we take our first breath and we inhale, okay, that's when we say we were born and we have a birth chart, right? But afterwards we keep breathing, right? And the planets keep moving. So by a little astrological magic, we say that for every day after you're born, it equals a year. And so you can look at the first 90 years of your life through the first 90 days of your life. Okay. So, of course, we've been around for longer than that. We've been around for 240 something years. But here you see the chart. Okay. And right now, our sun is in Pisces. So we're all in it together. Pisces is very much about the unity, and we're seeing that, we're feeling that, we're seeing that we really are one. But the main thing I want to bring out, and the moon is back in Aquarius, and I'll talk about that in a minute because that's important. But Mars is in Libra retrograde, and Chiron is in Aries still, and they're right opposite each other. And that's interesting because Mars is usually unhappy in Libra. Mars rules Aries. Mars says, it's all about me. Let me go out and do what I want and kill you all if you don't like it. In Libra, it has to pull back that energy and be an equal partner, right? And when planets go retrograde, they're rethinking things. And so, and then it rules Chiron, it rules Aries, so it rules here. So basically, it's confronting the wound to itself. And so as a country, we're not only wounded, but our men are wounded. I think much more than a lot of other countries' men. Okay. Right now, this weekend, they're having a storytelling festival online for the masculine spirit. Okay. We have toxic masculinity in America because men had to come over here and fight the wilderness and beat up bears and kill everybody. And you know what I mean? So we have this tough masculine attitude about pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And more than any other country, we have that masculine left brain. We have to be logical, and we can't trust intuition. And of all the countries, women in all other countries have been made president. We have the last country that's ever going to get a woman president. Men in America fear women. They really do. Maybe it's because we're a cancer country and they're all mama's boys. I don't know. But I feel like this is telling us that right now the men are going to start to heal. And I say yay to that. Okay. I've been waiting for the new king to be born. We need a new masculine energy, and it comes from what I call the goddess. Okay. The divine feminine, this is a bit about what my book is about, gives birth to a new masculine energy that's connected to the earth, that is a protector, that protects the earth and protects the people. And I think that's the biggest thing that I see going on here, which I think is amazing. Okay. So let's see, what's this? I don't even know what it is. Okay. So this is the birth chart. This is the progress chart. And then this is our chart right now for what's like today. I just wanted to point out, we have all these planets in Aquarius, but the progressed moon of America's birth chart is at 3 degrees Aquarius, which now I'm going to get to. This was the conjunction on December 21st of Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius. The first time in 800 years that those two planets have been in an air sign. And it's interesting to notice that, okay, let me find my notes. I was listening to Matthew Fox give a talk. If you don't know him, he's this amazing spiritual teacher. He used to be a monk in the Catholic Church. And the two popes, John Paul and Benedict, kept silencing him because he'd write books like Original Blessings. And he'd say, why are we talking about original sin? What about our original blessings? And creation spirituality and the coming of the cosmic Christ. And he left the church and he hangs out with witches and Native American shamans now. But he does a lot of writing about a group of mystics that were really important in the 11th and 12th century, which is the last time these two planets, Saturn and Jupiter, which shape our cultural mindset, were in air. In the 12th century, okay, they had the return of the goddess. They had Eleanor of Aquitaine, who was Henry Plantagenet's wife, and she was the heiress of Aquitaine, which was a bigger area in France than Paris was. And she married the French king and went on crusades and met Henry, and they got married, and their children were Richard the Lion-Hearted and Prince John, the one that Robin Hood fought against. But also, her and Henry, had fights, and she went back to Aquitaine, and she started a school of love. And it was all about teaching the knights how to be men, how to work. And they did it by worshiping a woman, okay, and listening to her and following feminine rules. At this time, they started building. Oh, the other thing that happened back then was there was climate change. I don't know if you know it, but Rome is on an equal level with Wisconsin. Okay, so if you look across the globe, Rome, which we think of as hot and sunny and warm, is way up north of us, and England is up in Canada. Okay, the same latitude up in Canada, and so it was pretty cold, and they had a mini ice age, but it started to warm up. And because of that, they changed the way, and also because they had gone over on these crusades and brought back Islamic knowledge. So they built the Gothic cathedrals, which were supposed to be like forests. Those big columns were supposed to represent the forest, and the stained glass windows were like the light coming through the forest. And it was a time, and they had and all of the cathedrals that they built at that time were dedicated to the lady, to Mother, to the goddess, to Mary, or to the Black Virgin. So here's the goddess returning. The green man, they have green men all over all of these cathedrals, which is what we're looking for in the rebirth of the masculine who is of the earth, not of the heavens. We've lived in a society with religions, even Buddhism, which is a lovely religion, that says this is all illusion. The best place to be is out of here, okay? But the Celts and the ancient people knew spirit came into earth. And so the green man represents the masculine who is for the earth. And so back in the 12th to 14th century, we had, the other thing he was talking about is because of the climate change, they could grow things. There were longer growing times. It was warmer. And so there weren't enough jobs for the kids. So if you ran away from the farm, this was the end of feudalism, you were free. And so there were a whole lot of like hippie communities, like the 60s, like the communes in the 60s. So all of these people were moving away from the country and into towns that became cities. And this is when their first universities started. So, and a lot of this is from Islam, because the Muslims had all the knowledge of the ancients and they kept it. They didn't try to destroy it like the Christians did. So in the 12th century, there was an uplifting of nature and humanity together. And of course, technology, interestingly enough, they had to have a leap in technology to build those Gothic cathedrals and make those amazing stained glass windows, which nobody has been able to do again. So here you have this new beginning in Aquarius. And if you go back to America's Progress chart, the public is ready for it. We are ready for it, big time. Right? Okay, so now we come to the big guy, Pluto. We're about to have our Pluto return, okay? Which is usually the end of empire and a rebirth. And this is what I think Steve Bannon and Trump and all of them knew about. They know it's time for a new revolution. And they got all of these people to follow that revolution. and say it's time for a revolution. It's not quite. Pluto's not going to be back there for another 2 years, another year and a half. Okay. But this is what happened. Okay. This is from the Astrologer's Handbook. Capricorn is the sign dealing with political and economic power structures, professions, status, ambition, and leadership. And new concepts of government was born when Pluto was in Capricorn from 1762 to 1777. The most notable manifestation was the American Declaration of Independence. The birth of democratic forms of government at this time began to displace the aristocratic power structures. When Pluto again enters Capricorn, now they wrote this in 1973, a world government based on the best interests of all mankind will begin. The government will be founded on new social, legal, educational, and religious concepts. The generation that will be born with Pluto and Capricorn will manifest dynamic, practical will in organization, business, and government. This will be based on the concept that all human beings must be given a chance to develop their own potential according to their ability and self-discipline. Now, I don't know if we'll have a world government, but we're certainly, after the last 6 years, we aren't exceptional anymore. At least in terms of all the other countries in the world, we're not exceptional, we're not the leader, we're just back, okay? And we're equal. And we needed that perhaps, okay? But interesting, Pluto in Aquarius, which is going to happen in 2024 to 2043, Aquarius is the sign of group activity, intuitive mental development, science, and humanitarianism. The period in which Pluto was in Aquarius witnessed the American Revolutionary War and saw the formulation of the United States Constitution and Bill of Rights. The United States had its real birth as a democratic nation, being the first to demonstrate that rule by people in a well-organized democracy or republic was possible. This was also the time of the French Revolution, major European experiment in political freedom, representing the revolt of the common people ruled by Aquarius against outmoded dictatorial forms of government. The next transit of Pluto through Aquarius, 2024 to 43, will be a time of tremendous scientific discovery and worldwide brotherhood. The Aquarian age will come into its full flower then. I don't know if it will come into its full flower. I think it will come into its beginning. Okay. So this is what we have to look for. Every time, besides planetary cycles, when a planet goes into a new sign, things change a lot too. So in 2023 to 4, Pluto's going to go into Aquarius. So we're going to see it first bring up all the technological issues that need to be faced, like Facebook, okay, and Google, and all of those things. We're already seeing a bit of it. Neptune has been in its own sign of Pisces, reconnecting us to spirit, asking us to use our imagination. The whole quantum field, okay, is open to us. It's that whole how do we manifest things? Then it's going to go into Aries, which is going to be interesting because it's going to bring in this whole new, how do we bring our imagination forward? Uranus, which is in Taurus right now, is going to go into Gemini in 2025 and 2026 because it's in Taurus right now. And then 26 to 27, Chiron, that wounded healer, which is also the mentor. As we get older, we become the mentor. And then it's going to go into Taurus. So we're going to have a lot of changes. Everybody was going, oh, yippee. This new, the conjunction on winter solstice, is going to bring it all in. It's going to be easy. No, it's not. For the next few years, we're still going to have a lot of work to do. But the new moon in Aquarius is this week on the 11th. 6 planets are in Aquarius. Whenever that many planets line up in one sign, it's like the lights go off. You've won the prize, right? Mars and Uranus are in Taurus. Taurus squares Aquarius. Aquarius is a fixed sign, so is Taurus, so a lot of stubbornness. Neptune is squaring what we call the lunar nodes. The lunar nodes are North Node in Gemini, South Node in Sagittarius right now. They move backwards through the signs. So the nodes right now are saying, look at your ancient belief systems, your religions, or the things you believe. Are they limiting beliefs? Do they serve you? If they don't serve you, let them go. And the way you let them go is you go into Gemini, open your mind, and find new things to learn. The more you learn, the more you can come back and figure out what your beliefs are. And then Pluto is still in Capricorn. And as I said, all year long, it's going to go back and forth over that Mercury in America's birth chart. And so we're going to be hearing a lot of things that have maybe been kept secret. So these are some Aquarian themes. Social media and big tech. One of the big things that are happening is people are leaving WhatsApp and they're going to this app called Signal because WhatsApp is was sold to Facebook and they get all your personal information. So that's just one thing. Okay, one of the reasons we all got on, my family got on WhatsApp is they coded, whatever it's called, your texts, and nobody could read them, but now they can. And the man who started WhatsApp started a thing called Signal, and that has all of those safeguards and protections. So not only that, but people are looking at what these big tech companies are doing, and they're saying no more, and they're leaving it for other things. The other thing is new technologies. Okay, we're talking about innovation and fair distribution and all different things. And this is Aquarian. The stock market. I don't know anything about the stock market, so I had to read up on this, and I found it through another astrologer, Butterfly Mama something. But there was that whole thing with GameStop and Robinhood. And basically it was the little guy beat out the hedge funds, right? Group of amateurs got together and they screwed over these big, hedge fund guys. But then Google took all, and so what they did was they had 4 stars in Robinhood and they gave them all 1 stars, and Google took it over and got rid of the 1-star ratings. So once again, big tech taking over things, not so good. People are upset. Okay, so what happened is that it's Saturn and Aquarius square Uranus and Taurus. Aquarius is information and it's groups of people coming together, and Taurus is finances and personal values. So Saturn and Aquarius says, let's coordinate our social actions. And Uranus and Taurus says, let's disrupt finances. Okay. And I don't know anything about Bitcoin, but that's all in there too. I don't, imaginary money. And I guess that's the next thing coming, but I hope I'm dead before I have to deal with it, because I'm saving my dollars, I got my money that way. So, and the interesting thing is squares, okay? Squares create friction, okay? And they want to change the rules, right? And last year we had all of those planets in Capricorn. This year, the big energy is going to be Saturn in Aquarius squaring Uranus in Taurus. But it's the last phase, it's the last square, like the waning moon square, the moon that comes up at midnight and you see the last quarter moon. So it's all about consciously knowing what you value, okay? So this is the thing that's going to be active, and it's very fascinating because Saturn is pretty much conservative, but it's in Aquarius, which it rules with Uranus, and it's the most progressive sign. Whereas Uranus, which is revolutionary and awakening, it's in Taurus, the most traditional, earthy, fixed sign you can get. So we are going to run into some issues, right? The first time they square is going to be February 17th. So watch what's going on for you. And they're going to square it around 7 or 8 degrees of Taurus and Aquarius. If you have any planets there, you'll be affected. Or if you have planets in Scorpio and Leo around there, you will be affected. But it's going to happen 3 times because planets seem to go backwards. Like right now we're in Mercury retrograde. That's just about an orbit we orbit past Mercury. I was telling Deb, excuse me, because Mercury is inside of, between us and the sun, it doesn't get very far from the sun compared to us. So it has to look like it goes backwards 3 times a year just because of the orbits that we have. But it represents how we think. And our thinking runs away from us. So it's really good that we get stopped and we have to rethink about things, right? So all planets look like they go retrograde except for the moon. Even, Mars did last year. Instead of being in Aries for 6 weeks, it was there for 6 months. And that's why we had a lot of disruption. Mars and Aries rule, and Mars and Aries, Mars retrogrades, but not very often in Aries. It's the sign it rules. And there was a real danger of the government going to war, but they didn't. Okay, because it was squaring all of those Capricorn planets, which is really about the struggle between the old versus the new. So this year we're going to have, what can we, Saturn in Aquarius and Jupiter's there. Jupiter has a lot of ideas. Let's do it. And in Aquarius, it's like, yes, let's get out there. But Saturn says, well, let's see what's possible. And it sort of tones down that energy. And then Uranus challenges it and says, let's see if it works. And because Aries is a fixed air sign, it brings us knowledge. But because sharing information is Aquarian, okay, it's also about distributing information and shared. And that's what we're seeing a lot. And just kind of a fun thing, Aquarius rules the circulatory system of the body. And Aquarius is opposite Leo, the sun, which is the pump of the circulation of the body, right? So this is what is happening. People are taking coordinated action. We're having the democratization of information, the decentralization of power with different groups fighting for freedom and sovereignty, and people are getting more powerful, okay? And people are coming together in groups. We're finding our tribe. So my throat is sort of getting, okay, one sec. Stop share. Okay. Gallery view. Okay. I think that's it for now. Any questions? I've lost a lot of you, I see.
Kathy, that was great. That was so interesting. So much to think about. So it looks like, if I'm right, from what you had said, things don't really start happening a lot till maybe 2024. Like we're going to be in this time, like everybody saying, no, we got this new president, everything, but it's not going to happen right away. It seems like things are going to start rolling in about 3 years. Am I right?
Another 2 or 3 years. Okay. And that doesn't mean that there still won't be hardship. When we'll really know what's happening, okay, is around in 40 years, okay? Because all of this goes back to the 60s. Back in the 60s, 65, 66, Uranus, the planet of revolution, and Pluto, the planet of evolution, death and rebirth, evolution, came together. And they started a new cycle. And that's all the crazy hippies, make love, not war. It was like a new moon, Then from 2012 to 2015, those two planets were in a square, first square. And all of the issues from the 60s and 70s came back. Women's rights, equal rights, voting rights, social rights, all of that. And we're still working on that. When it has the opposition sometime in the 2040s, I'm not quite sure what date, that's the full moon aspect. And that's when we'll know, did we do the work? But this is our time to do the work. We're the grandparents of the future. And if we don't do our work now, in that future, okay, big tech will be in charge. Whatever, all the, people that are so afraid and into these conspiracy theories, they're kind of right, because there are, quite a bit of powerful people who pretty much run the world. But if we do something about it, we will create a better version of what they think they're doing.
Yeah. That's a good point. Grandparents, that's how I feel like I'm a grandparent. Well, we're at that age too, but I feel like this new generation that's being born now is going to be the one that really brings the change in. I guess I wasn't expecting it that long. So we
I
might not
know.
be around to really see it. Um, I'm just curious, like personally, then what I'm hearing you say is to this is the time where we start letting go of what doesn't serve us and to start getting new knowledge in to make some decisions of how we want to move on with our life. Is that kind of what
Yeah.
you're?
And I heard something that I really liked today on this storytelling conference. She said, instead of talking about our purpose, why don't we talk about our gifts?
Mm,
Our purpose sounds like, I have to get out there and like, "Arr." And our gifts are just if we develop our gifts and then offer it to help, contribute something. Okay. That is more important than thinking I have to have this big giant purpose. Because it's, basically everybody's saying, what's my purpose? And it's driving people crazy. Because we're still caught in patriarchy thinking it's got to be go big, it's got to be influential, it's got to make me powerful, maybe I'll make $1 million, rather than, a lot of it might just be, if you change, you send out that vibe, and that's what you do, and that's all it is. Do you know?
yeah, true.
That could
That's
be.
such, I love that. I love the rewording of purpose to gifts. And you're right. We all have a gift to share. And if we all shared our gift or gifts, it's, it just manifests so much better than, yeah, purpose seems so like exhausting, like,
It seems exhausting. It does.
and
And
I
I
love
read
the
this
idea of gift.
really nice little story on Facebook, um, about a mother who was at an airport. She was pregnant and she had a little 2 or 3 year old, and he was having a tantrum. And she was trying to get him. He didn't want to get on the plane, and he was screaming and crying. And she finally sat down and just started crying on the floor. And about 6 women from all over the place. They didn't talk, they weren't friends, they just came. And one sang to them the Incy Beatsy Spider, and one gave them the little boy something to drink, and one rubbed the mother's back until everything was fine.
Wow.
And to me, that's it.
That's the collective too. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the village. I'm crying. But that's the village that we need,
Yes.
you know?
Does anybody else have another question? Just unmute yourself and ask Kathy or comments.
I just need to take off. I actually want to shovel some snow before dark.
Okay.
So
Take
I
care.
gotta,
Don't hurt yourself.
Good to see you, Adria.
right, a little at a time. And I just want to say one thing though about the shift to gift rather than purpose. It sounds good to me, but also I'm in my 70s, and I think some of that is relevant in terms of age. I realized, I don't know when, but not too long ago, that question, what is my purpose, was so irrelevant to me now, and it used to be relevant. And I think that's, for me, what I felt was that it was age related. So just putting that in,
Right.
although when you speak from gifts, then it's speaking more from service, which is a nice shift. So I'm not disagreeing, but I'm seeing another dimension.
Well, and I know people don't like to get into the bipolar stuff of it, but to me, purpose is very masculine and driven, whereas a gift is very feminine. It's just something that
I,
we
I
have.
see. Well, really, it's more like this rather than this.
Yeah.
Right, right. I understand what you're saying energetically very much. I'm just playing.
Yeah, and
I gotta
energetically, Adria, it's part of like Qigong, we work in seasons, and the season of our life is the like between 33 and 58. We're purposely driven. So I know what you're saying. Now, when we get older, now it's more about the gifts. We did the purpose. Now what? Yeah, is that what you mean? Kind of like age.
Well, I feel things differently. Like that question fell away from me. That's what it used to be, a question that I mulled over, and it's like just it's fallen, it's
Yeah.
gone. And for me, I understand it in terms of my age. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean that's true for
No,
everybody.
no, no.
Just-
You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Yeah, I get. Yeah,
I have a lot of clients who are younger, who are still in that
Yeah.
stage.
And if you see that, and you may see that it's burdensome for them, you can give them this other way of
Yeah.
approaching their lives.
Definitely.
Makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Set a good intention for the new moon. That's what I hear. It's a
Yes.
good
Set
moon
a
to
good
set
intention for the new moon, because the big thing is with all the planets in Aquarius, it's very much about, this is a seed time. It might not blossom for many years. Okay. But it's a seed time. So set an intention, use your imagination. Aquarius is very much about our hopes and goals for the future, our hopes for the future. So we can set out a template out into the cosmos, and it doesn't have to bear fruit right now. One of the things I want to say is, if you're interested, I have your email addresses, but if you're interested, I'm going to put you on my email list. But if you ever want a reading, I'll give you 25% off. And just let me know that you were on this YouTube, this class, and you'll get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Mary, you look cold. Where are you sitting? Take her off. Unmute her.
Okay, here I am. Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm actually in Texas, and
Oh.
I'm sitting out on the patio because I'm here with my grandchildren, and they popped in a few times and sat on my lap. But it's like fall. It's like fall weather here. It's actually beautiful.
I was going to say, you're not
You
here in
can
our
see the
snowstorm.
sun. I keep moving too because the sun keeps shining in my face. So that was excellent, Kathy. Thank you so much. So much information too, and I think
It is a lot. That's why I put it up where you could read it. So if you bother to go
yes,
back, you can actually read it rather than just hear me say it.
and take some notes and everything. And I think I'm kind of like everyone else too. I'm thinking, oh my God, is it going to be 40 years? I was hoping it'd be in the next 2 to 3 years. Oh
Well,
my
the thing
goodness.
is, we have to start supporting, I personally, I wasn't particularly excited about Biden, but when you look at what he's doing, this is what needs to happen. Okay.
Mhm.
On inauguration day, Mars and Uranus came together. Okay.
Yeah.
And it could have been like explosive. Mars and Uranus could be explosive, but
Yes.
they were squaring America's nodes, South Node in Aquarius, North Node in Leo. And so it was a very destiny moment.
Mhm.
It was a moment of karmic destiny. And
Okay.
he's moving ahead with what we need. We need to have different energy. We need to do, I'm not that political, but for 30 years, I've gone, why aren't we fixing our infrastructure?
Right.
Why are we letting things fall apart? We put all our money into war.
War.
Let's take
And
it all away.
really,
If they don't like us spending $2 trillion, let's take away the military budget. Not all of
Mhm.
it, okay, but most of
right,
it.
some of it.
But we need to shift our vision and our paradigm. And I think he's beginning to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, good, good. Yeah. Well, and I know too, the secret's getting revealed too. There is a lot. There's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of secrets that has to come to the surface to even eliminate, or even for us to start to look into making changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the more that regular people engage in being a citizen rather than a consumer, I'll never
Okay.
forget Bush
Mhm.
telling us to go out and shop after 9/11. And I thought,
Mm.
oh my God. I don't
Yeah.
know if any of you saw Wonder Woman 1984, the new Wonder
Right.
Woman movie. I'm thinking, what is this about? And I realized it was in the 80s that we became consumers. And it was all about consumerism.
Right. Right.
Even though it wasn't
Consuming
about buying
products.
things, the guy in it said, got the magic power. What do you wish? I can give it to you. And
Mhm.
everybody was wishing for different things, and it created tremendous havoc. And
Mhm.
Wonder Woman had to give up her wish to set everything right. And so
Mhm.
it's very interesting because we have to stop being consumers. The only way we can change things is to actually be citizens, to grow up and participate in this experiment of America, right?
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I think our healthcare is also was taken over by the idea of consumerism rather than the true purpose of real health. So we
Yeah.
really need a shift on that as well.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. Everything's been taken over by money, but you see at the end, there's so much to talk about. At the
I
end of a
know.
Pluto cycle, at the end of any cycle, it's like you get down to the bottom, like the bottom of the barrel, right?
Mm,
And we are at the bottom of the barrel. And we are seeing that everything in America, more than any other country, is all related to money and to
It
crooked
is.
money and to dirty
Yeah.
money and to the people that are running the show. And that's all coming out. And because of social media, because of whatever, we are fighting back. Years ago, I tell my son, I hope all the banks fail. He went, Mom, everything would fall apart. I said, that's what we need. I'm a total revolutionary. But anyway, there's that thing.
Be careful what you wish for,
Yeah.
Kathy.
No, that's what he said. But the thing is,
Yes.
it's falling apart.
Well, look what
It is
happened
falling
when
apart.
the depression hit the skids, and look at all the programs that came out of that.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, and also I was only talking about it in general, but, I was talking about the people who are making all the money and who are scamming everybody need to be brought down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, ladies, my throat hurts and I'm going to watch the Super Bowl.
Yes. us
So much.
too.
It was so great.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for asking me.
Mhm.
And the recording's still on.
Yeah,
Just so you know.
I'll shut that. Yeah, I
Okay.
left
Don't-
questions on because they were good
And
questions.
I'll try to remember tomorrow to